Good morning. This is the morning from the New York Times, your daily briefing for Tuesday, July 28, 2026. I'm Sam Sifton, and we've got a full edition today. We'll start in Havana, where a nation is defying predictions of collapse. Then we'll turn to the devastating wildfires sweeping across France and Spain, the war in Iran entering its sixth month, a cascade of political news from Michigan to the Supreme Court, developments in Congress, a tragic ferry sinking in Guyana, and a host of other stories, from a Secret Service agent charged in a hazing death to Johnny Depp's attempted Hollywood comeback. We'll close with the day's word, a no-recipe, and the games. Let's begin. 6 months ago, President Trump stood before reporters and declared that Cuba would soon be ruined. He had just seized control of Venezuela's oil, a lifeline for the island, and blockaded all other fuel sources. It's just going to fall, he told them. But as Jack Nicas, who covers the Caribbean, Central America, and Mexico for the Times, discovered on a recent reporting trip, the first journalism visas Cuba had granted to the Times in 7 years, the Cuban government and the Cuban people are still standing. Jack traveled with video journalist Alex Pena and photographer Lizette Poole Gonzalez. After a week on the ground, they write, we found that while Cubans are clearly suffering, they are also doing what perhaps they do best, adapting. The energy crisis is the worst in Cuba's history. Mass blackouts plague the electrical grid. The classic gas-guzzling Chevys, kept running since the revolution, are being sidelined. In their place, electric rickshaws from China. Cubans are importing large lithium batteries to run appliances during blackouts and installing solar panels on roofs to charge them. Amateur mechanics across the country are jury-rigging generators to run on more accessible natural gas. One farmer even devised a tiny backyard refinery to make gasoline out of shredded plastic fuel for his motorcycle and cook stove. Cubans thrive amid crisis, he told Jack. I spoke with Jack yesterday about what he saw. I asked him about that farmer, and whether that kind of ingenuity was widespread. He told me one of the most important words in the Cuban lexicon is resolver. Literally, it means to solve, but after decades of a U.S. trade embargo, it's come to mean to figure things out by any means necessary. It explains how Cubans put Soviet engines into 1950s American cars to keep them running, or ate breaded grapefruit rinds to imitate meat during the special period after the Soviet Union fell. And now they're resolviendo again. Jack's team saw people drilling solar panels onto the tops of electric rickshaws, using lithium batteries to power concerts, even stories of cars running on charcoal and cooking oil. The result, the country is still functioning, despite the hardship. I asked Jack about the reception they received. It had been a long time since the Cuban government allowed Times journalists in. He said everywhere they turned, there were stories, and the Cuban people were eager to tell them. They spoke to dozens in Havana and beyond who wanted to express frustration and exhaustion with the status quo. Blame was a mixed bag. Some faulted the Cuban government for failed economic policies and political repression. Others believed Trump was making them suffer for his own gain. Many blamed both. As for the visa process, it took 6 months of convincing. Jack met with top Cuban diplomats in Mexico City, Havana, Washington, and New York, sent many letters, all to persuade them the story would be told fairly. Once in Havana, they met with officials a few times but were otherwise left alone. They traveled freely, chose their own story targets, and decided whom to interview. Their first dispatch is live now, with more to come tomorrow and Thursday. That brings us to today's word, pyrocumulonimbus. A giant, fire-generated thunderstorm that forms above an intense heat source like a wildfire or a volcano. Also known as a fire cloud, it can produce lightning, sparking more fires, and generate high, unpredictable winds that fan flames and spread embers. Officials say these clouds have been an unprecedented feature of the devastating fires in France this past week. And those fires are the story across Western Europe. A new heat wave this week could make the wildfires even worse. Blazes are advancing toward vineyards and chateaux in the Bordeaux region. The smoke alone could change the flavor of this year's vintage. Even as hundreds of thousands evacuate, some are staying behind to try to save their homes and farmland. In France, one of the largest fires in modern history is raging near Bordeaux's vineyards, the latest blow to a wine industry already staggering under multiple pressures. At Château Smith-Haute-Lafitte, a castle dating to 1365 draped in vines and flanked by half-timbered towers, the fire has burned to within 10 miles of the meticulously tended vineyards, shaking proprietors who thought their legacy gave them permanence. Firefighters are stretched thin. Volunteers like Guillaume Boss, a business manager and forest owner in Le Temple, a village of 600 some 18 miles west of Bordeaux, are putting themselves at risk using water tanks, hoses, and tractors to hold back flames. Everything is burned as far as the eye can see, he said. It's a real disaster. In Spain, helicopters dip into swimming pools to collect water. Temperatures in parts of both countries are expected to climb to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 Celsius, this week. It's the fourth heat wave to hit Europe since May. Forecasters warn that soaring temperatures, dry conditions, and strong winds will worsen the threat. Now to politics. President Trump traveled to Michigan yesterday, where he blamed the high cost of living on Joe Biden and painted a dystopian picture of what the United States could look like if Democrats win the midterms. The state's primary elections are next Tuesday. We had the single greatest year we've ever had as a country, Trump told the crowd in Milford. We're not going to let these people destroy it. He also assured supporters that negotiations over ending the war in Iran, a conflict that has sent fuel and energy prices soaring, are continuing in a friendly fashion. Last night, the Democrats running for Senate faced off in their final debate before the primary. Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, a progressive former public health official, and Representative Haley Stevens, a moderate, showcased wildly different ideological stances. El-Sayed repeatedly accused Stevens of being a tool of corporate interests. She declared he would use the Senate as a stepping stone to political celebrity and wouldn't put the state's needs first. Their ideological clash framed a race that could signal the direction of the party in a critical swing state. Also on the legal front, the Trump administration asked the Supreme Court Monday to clear the way for an executive order restricting mail-in voting, setting up a showdown ahead of the midterms. The emergency application came after a federal appeals court blocked key parts of the order on Saturday. Solicitor General D. John Sauer called the lower court ruling indefensible, asserting it imposed serious irreparable harm on the federal government's ability to ensure the integrity of federal elections. In Congress, Senator Rand Paul released more than 1,000 pages of a diary Dr. Anthony Fauci kept during the COVID pandemic, part of his investigation into whether Fauci lied to Congress about the virus's origins. The entries, private until now, have reignited a furious debate. On January 26, 2020, as the world was just awakening to the novel coronavirus, Fauci wrote in his diary about whether the virus might have originated in a Wuhan wet market. Now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier, he wrote. Having said that, somewhere the virus jumped from animals to humans. Fauci is scheduled to testify before the Senate this week. Senator Mitch McConnell, the former Republican leader from Kentucky, hospitalized for 6 weeks, extended his Senate leave Monday, saying he was not medically cleared to return. The 84-year-old also said he would miss Saturday's Fancy Farm, the annual Kentucky political picnic he's attended for more than 4 decades. I'm still working hard to get back to my full schedule, he said in a statement, keeping up with intense physical therapy. Meanwhile, funeral services begin today for Senator Lindsey Graham, who died this month. He's being remembered as a friend and relentless fighter. The war in the Middle East enters its 6th month, a period of deep uncertainty. Soon after it began on February 28, President Trump declared Iran totally defeated and wants a deal. In March, he said the U.S. military would wrap up its campaign in 2 to 3 weeks. We will be leaving very soon, he said. Now, after nearly 2 weeks of attacks and counterattacks, Trump has held off a major escalation, but major issues remain unsettled. The cycles of fighting have resulted in staggering losses and estimated 1,700 Iranian civilians killed in airstrikes. Yesterday, Trump said there was a good chance a new round of diplomacy with Iran could yield a breakthrough, but warned he would quickly resume airstrikes if it didn't. We're talking right now, he told reporters aboard Air Force One. Iran took a beating over the last 14 days, and they asked us very nicely, please stop, let's meet, he said, an assertion Iran quickly denied. Iran denied it was open to more negotiations and gave no sign it would make concessions or speak directly with U.S. officials. Having failed to achieve his goals through 2 weeks of renewed attacks, it's unclear what Trump hopes to achieve this time. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, said it intercepted and destroyed several drones launched by Iranian-backed Iraqi militias on Monday, the kingdom's first direct military response to such attacks from Iraq since the U.S.-Iran ceasefire collapsed. The Saudi Defense Ministry said the drones targeted petroleum facilities in the eastern province and Riyadh regions. These terrorist attempts were launched from Iraqi territory and executed by Iranian-affiliated terrorist militias, the ministry said, prompting Saudi officials to demand Baghdad prevent its territory from being used to launch missiles. The kingdom is being dragged deeper into the wider regional conflict as it faces attacks from Iraq and Yemen. Around the world, in Guyana, the capsizing of a state-run ferry this month killed an estimated 100 people, the country's deadliest event since Jonestown in 1978. A vigil was held in Georgetown. The tragedy is deepening political fault lines in an oil-rich country and top U.S. ally in South America, one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Many are asking how this could happen. In Europe, police say Binance, the world's biggest cryptocurrency exchange, has quietly made it more difficult to track down scammers and fight money laundering. Investigators say the company enacted a policy last April requiring law enforcement officials to submit requests through a cumbersome online portal rather than direct contacts, slowing investigations. Binance had previously tried to clean up its act after years of legal problems, working directly with investigators to freeze suspicious accounts. The new policy is a big shift. And a police officer who spent 9 years enforcing China's repression campaign against Uyghurs in Xinjiang is seeking asylum in Germany, claiming he is also a victim of the state policy. His case highlights the reach of China's security apparatus and the moral injuries inflicted on its own enforcers. On the crime beat, television anchor Savannah Guthrie made a desperate new plea for help Monday, just days shy of the 6-month mark of her 84-year-old mother Nancy's mysterious disappearance. Addressing the unknown person responsible, Guthrie said in an Instagram video, "I'm asking you, begging you, to do the right thing now. Make the right choice. Help us find her. Tell us where to look." Nancy Guthrie has been missing since early morning on February 1, when a figure wearing a ski mask was recorded by doorbell camera at her home near Tucson, Arizona. In Idaho, Brian Koberger, the criminology student convicted last year of murdering 4 University of Idaho students in their home, is seeking to abandon his guilty plea and obtain a trial. He claims he is innocent and was misled into confessing. In an interview from prison, where he's serving 4 life sentences, Koberger said he filed a petition challenging his conviction, citing concerns about how the plea deal came together. "My actual innocence is my truth," he said. He blamed his guilty plea on false promises and wrong information. Other big stories: Congress is considering an end to America's spring forward, fallback clock changes. The Sunshine Protection Act, passed by the House this month, would make daylight saving time permanent. But scientists warn that more light at the day's end comes at a price: much later winter sunrises across much of the U.S., with documented consequences for public health and the economy. A competing House measure would lock the clock on standard time. Lawmakers continue to debate. Apple regained its title as the world's most valuable publicly traded company from Nvidia on Monday, about 2 years after it lost the crown. Apple's stock finished the day up more than 1%, a market valuation of $4.9 trillion. Nvidia's stock, driven by spending concerns amid the AI boom, was down almost 5%, a market cap of $4.8 trillion. Apple's ascent was as much a result of Nvidia's sell-off as investor endorsement. Apple has sat on the sidelines of the AI race. And in Virginia, Mia Bieniemy, wife of Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, was shot Sunday night at the couple's home in Ashburn. Their son, 27-year-old Elijah Bieniemy, was arrested and charged with malicious wounding, use of a firearm in commission of a felony, and discharge of a firearm inside an occupied dwelling. Eric Bieniemy will be away from training camp indefinitely to support his wife. Opinion pages today: Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has critics divided. Maureen Dowd writes that modernizing Odysseus for our times is disappointing. B.D. McClay argues it's what we deserve, an ancient text revisiting modern preoccupations with heroism, guilt, memory, and time. And Joanna Novak considers adopting the life of a tradwife, at least a little bit, reflecting on the new Netflix reboot of Little House on the Prairie and the longing for frontier simplicity after giving birth to her second son. Morning reads: young Maori in New Zealand are embracing Tamoko, the ritual tattoos banned under British colonial rule, which became an act of protest in the 1970s. In Montana, a nurse on a hike trekked 10 miles to safety after impaling himself on a hiking pole. You won't believe the photo. In Ukraine, new children's books titled "Why Isn't Dad at Home?" are helping families cope with the trauma of war. The most clicked link in the morning yesterday was about a Secret Service agent who took part in a fraternity hazing that nearly killed a college student, Marquez Pinder, 29, arrested on felony charges of hazing, attempted manslaughter, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. And 30 beluga whales are being relocated from a closed marine attraction in Canada to aquariums in the US and Spain, an unprecedented rescue requiring cargo planes, custom foam-lined containers, cranes, and police escorts. Recipe of the day: a no-recipe recipe. Grab a rotisserie chicken on the way home, rinse some rice, get it into the rice cooker, let time do its thing. Add chopped nuts and dried fruit to the grains when finished, carve the chicken, dinner served. Weeknight dinners don't have to take up all of the weeknight. Call it a comeback. A decade after Johnny Depp's Hollywood career went south, dragged down by a long, public legal fight with ex-wife Amber Heard, in which each accused the other of abuse, Paramount Pictures believes audiences are ready to re-embrace him. The studio has made Depp the star of its forthcoming Thanksgiving film, Ebenezer, A Christmas Carol. The Master of Misfits returns, the teaser trailer declares, cutting to Depp, made up and costumed as Ebenezer Scrooge. He rasps, "It's good to be back." It's the biggest Hollywood comeback campaign in memory. More on culture. Lindsay Zoledz, Times pop music critic, has a banger of a review for Charli XCX's new album Music, Fashion, Film, proudly prickly, satisfyingly scuzzy, brief, barbed, and unrepentantly personal. The whole thing's a delight to read. Most ballet slippers are manufactured in pale pink, but New York City Ballet's repertoire requires a rainbow of colors. Meet the Picasso of pointe shoes, Tim Foster, the company's shoe colorist. And late-night hosts mocked Trump's speech at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. "And let's just say Iran's not the only thing he bombed," Seth Meyers said. "Oh my God, that room is so quiet." The Morning recommends, read Ismail Muhammad's essay in the Times Magazine on how Colson Whitehead's Harlem trilogy has turned away from the pessimism of his earlier novels to offer a more hopeful vision for Black history. Get a facial regularly, the Well team says. It's a good way to get rid of stress. Dermatologists confirm facials offer immediate glow, but longer-term improvements require consistency. And stop using non-stick pans. One fanatical Wirecutter writer tested roughly a gajillion of them to discover they all eventually fail. Embrace stainless steel or cast iron instead. Games, today's spelling bee. Yesterday's pangram was inactivity. And here are today's mini crossword, Wordle, connections, crossplay, and strands. Thanks for spending part of your morning with the Times and me. See you tomorrow.